Welcome to the channel. Today we're sharing a cheating story you won't believe. If you enjoy it, please like and subscribe. Let's get started. I was sitting outside at Coffee Haven in Seattle, sipping my usual vanilla mocha frappe. It's my go-to drink, and the baristas always have it ready for me as soon as I walk in. I guess I'm pretty predictable. Sometimes, I catch a few annoyed looks from people in line when one of the staff skips over to hand me my drink with a cheerful, "Good morning, Mr. Grayson." Maybe the extra tips help. It was a typical sunny day, clear skies, about 104 degrees, with a gentle ocean breeze. I sat under a palm tree at my small table, enjoying just enough shade to avoid a sunburn. My driver, Daniel, was relaxing next to me, half asleep while I tried to read the Morning Herald. But my mind kept drifting back to the past 9 months. That's how long it's been since my wife left me for someone else. I was living in Central Texas at the time, working as a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company. I wasn't the greatest tech employed there. In reality, I was a little lower than average. I didn't even try hard. I suppose I wasn't the most ambitious employee they had. To be exact, if I finished one job, I would just wait until the next job was assigned to me instead of looking for more work. I tended to hide a lot. As usual, I was surfing the web after finishing my last task when my supervisor walked into my cubicle. He said the department manager wanted to see me. This was an unusual request, and I was just a little apprehensive. We walked to the elevators together to visit him. When my supervisor and I reached the big boss office, Jessica, his secretary, asked us to take a seat. I believe she said, "Mr. Thompson is on the phone and will see you shortly." Shortly turned out to be almost 39 minutes, the longest 39 minutes of my life. When we were finally escorted into his office, we weren't even offered a chair. "Ethan, that's me," he started. "You have been an employee of this company for—" He stopped to look at some paperwork on his desk. 9 months. "I regret to inform you that your services are no longer required here. You will receive 9 month severance, all your accrued vacation and personal time in your next paycheck." Well, that was it. I was fired. What the hell was I going to do now? I was too old to start all over again. What the hell was I going to tell Natalie, my wife? I thought as I packed my belongings in a box. I'm not really sure what the next couple of hours contained, but I found myself sitting in a bar having a double, actually my third or fourth double, when the bartender suggested that I had had enough and it was time to go home. I drove carefully home. No use getting a DUI arrest, I thought. I pulled into my garage and promptly drove partially through the rear wall. I suppose my wife had some work done today, and it involved shortening the garage. Well, the noise should have brought her out to the garage, but it didn't. When I finally got to my feet and tried the door to the house, I found it unlocked. I opened the door to a completely empty kitchen. The table and chairs were gone. But even worse, all the kitchen appliances were also missing. The first thought entering my foggy mind was, "We've been robbed." I staggered into the living room, and everything was gone. The room was as bare as it was when we first bought the house. My head was still a little slow, and I never noticed the pile of my stuff in the middle of the living room floor. I carefully climbed the stairs to the bedroom area. I found everything missing. Well, not everything. All my clothes and stuff were thrown in a pile on the bedroom floor. The pile stunk. After a while, I realized the smell was urine. As I got closer to the pile, the smell got stronger and stronger. In my drunken state, I vomited to culminate my day. I hit my clothes. I went downstairs and curled up on the carpet. I won't claim that I fell asleep. I think I just passed out. When I awoke the next morning, I had the world's biggest hangover. My head throbbed, my mouth tasted as if an army had marched through, and my body was stiffer than a board from sleeping on the floor. I stumbled out to the garage and noticed my wife's car was gone. I staggered back to the kitchen, planning on fixing some coffee if there was any left. There wasn't. She took that too. It took a few minutes for my brain to engage a little more before I saw the note on the counter. I picked it up and started reading. "Ethan, we have been married almost 9 months. In that length of time, you have turned out to be a loser. You are not a good husband, a good provider, or a good lover. You were selfish and think only of your wants and needs. I have moved my stuff out and into my lover's house. I will be contacting a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Natalie." Well, I suppose I knew where today was going. Natalie was a legal secretary for a large law firm. I suspected that she was planning to upgrade to one of the attorneys as well as use the firm to gut me. Thank God we didn't have children. I was a little pissed, so I looked for the house phones. They were all gone. I still had my company's cell phone, they forgot to ask me for it. So as a final act of defiance, I called the bank and reported that I was mugged last night and my wallet was stolen. A very helpful young lady froze all my credit cards and my checking and savings accounts. The debit card was stolen too. After I got off the phone, I was smiling. Boy, was Natalie going to be pissed when none of our joint cards worked. I packed my things into my car. They took all the luggage. I couldn't even find any garbage bags. They took everything. One of the reasons I headed someplace else, my favorite watering hole, was the fact that it was owned and operated by my best friend since childhood, the one person I trusted with my life. So I went to his bar for advice. Bartenders always give the best advice, and besides, he had an ex-wife and might know a good divorce attorney. There was also the problem of hiding my final check. I didn't want Natalie to get it. Michael poured me a double as I walked into the barroom. After last night, I figure you could use one, he stated with great sympathy. I downed the glass in one gulp. He looked at me in shock. I really didn't drink that way, so I told him my story from when I left his bar last night. When I got done, I had the name of his divorce attorney, an apartment over the bar, and an IOU equaling the amount of my severance check. He was going to include the check in one of his banking deposits and just dole out the money as I needed. Time went on, and so did my divorce. It was 9 months later that I found myself divorced, living in a small one-bedroom apartment in a questionable neighborhood. My loving wife had hired a shark for a lawyer. Hell, she worked for the firm and I was cleaned out. She got the house, the 401k, the investment account, the checking and saving accounts. However, she almost got alimony payments, but since I had no job or money, the judge took pity on me and forgave them. I still had the severance check. No one on her legal team thought to ask about it. It might sound as if my ex made out, but the house was upside down on the mortgage. The savings account had less than 20 in it. The checking account was almost empty from paying the monthly bills with no deposits, and the newly started 401k had less than 13 in it. And best of all, in my opinion, was the fact that most of the joint credit cards were near their max. It seems Natalie went on a spending spree before the divorce was final. I suppose she planned on sticking me with the bill. Since I had no income at the time, the judge stuck her with them. I think it took a week to get the smile off my face. Eventually, I had to get a job. I wound up as a janitor in the school system. I worked the night shift. My days consisted of either sitting at my computer or sitting at my friend's local bar. Guess what I did with my free time when at the bar? I was on my way to becoming an alcoholic. One morning, I found a lucky lotto ticket in my pocket. I didn't remember buying it, but I did remember that the bar I favored sold them. I tossed the ticket on my desk and went to the bathroom. I did the 3SS and started my morning coffee. I needed that wonderful elixir to feel human in the morning. Well, actually, it was 1 p.m., but that was morning to me. When I got out of the shower, I waited for my PC to boot. I noticed the lucky lotto ticket beckoning me. So once the PC started, I fired up Firefox and went to the lucky lotto site. I checked the numbers on the ticket 3 times. They matched the winners. I reread the webpage. There was only one winning ticket sold, and it was worth 156 million. That's millions, folks. I grabbed a pen and quickly signed my name on the back of the ticket. My next item of business was to call the lawyer who represented me in the divorce. I got his answering machine. It was a Sunday. I left a detailed message asking him to call me. 2 hours later, he called back. I suppose he didn't have anything going on this Sunday either. I explained my winner. I made an appointment for Tuesday. The next day we had a very long discussion about trusts, investments, tax avoidance, and most importantly, that my ex was not entitled to anything. It took almost a few weeks to set up all the hidden bank accounts and take possession of the money. 2 weeks later, I was looking at property in Canary Islands. I wanted a fancy place on one of the hills near Azure Cove, a suburb of Nassau. It took almost 9 months before I had the new place set up to my liking, but now I was finished and enjoying the good life. My favorite memory of this period was when I got a call from my lawyer. It seems that my ex-wife wanted to talk. She had heard about my winnings. My lawyer shot her down. I knew there was something I liked about him, so there I was, sipping my frappe and enjoying my thoughts when I felt something. Did you ever have one of those funny feelings that you were being watched? I started to alert my driver. He was also my bodyguard when I looked around and spotted a little girl of about 5 or 6 standing there watching me. She had long dark hair and the prettiest blue eyes I had ever seen on a child, but they were very sad eyes. She had a small doll clutched to her chest and a small blanket under her nose. She tore at my heart, and I wanted to just hug her and make all her problems go away. I looked at her and gave her my friendliest smile. There was no sense in frightening her with a dirty look. At the same time, I looked for a hovering parent. No parent I knew would ever let their child wander around strangers. I widened my search, still nothing. I got the attention of one of the counter girls, and with some improvised sign language, asked, "Who is she?" I watched as she asked the other counter girls, and all I received in return for my efforts was a shrug of her shoulders. By now, I had attracted the attention of a couple of women sitting around the courtyard. As I surveyed them, they all shook their heads no. By now, the little girl was scared. There were tears dripping from her eyes. I gave her my best smile and handed her my clean hanky. She took it and just stood there with it in her hand. I took her little hand and dried her eyes. For my efforts, I got a small smile and a dirty handkerchief. A couple of the women walked over to me and started talking to her. One of the women pulled out her cell phone and dialed 1184. I heard her talk to the operator about a lost child. When she hung up, she turned to me and said, "5 minutes." The little girl started making small noises, so I started running my fingers through her hair. I gave her a soft little kiss on the top of her head. She looked at me and said, "Grazie." No. It had been 26 months, but I recognized the phrase. It was Italian for "thank you, grandfather." You see, in the late 1980s, I was stationed in Italy courtesy of the U.S. Army. I picked quite a lot of Italian while I was there. If a guy wanted to get close and personal with one of the bar girls, speaking the language was necessary. This little girl spoke Italian. "Sophia, come ti chiami?" "Hi beautiful, my name is Ethan," I said. I saw her eyes light up and a great big smile crossed her face. She hugged me tighter. "Sophia, what is your name? Beautiful?" I asked. "Sophia," she answered. Well, I tried a couple more times but got nothing different, so I decided to try another direction. "Aqua? Water?" I asked. I got a little smile, so I took her hand, and into the latte bliss we went. While we were looking at the cold drink cooler, one of the baristas whipped up a small caramel frappe and gave it to Sophia. One sip and Sophia was hooked. She gave the girl a big smile and said, "Grazie." Polite child. We walked back out to my table, and Sophia sat next to me and slowly drank her treat. I spotted the Seattle police cruiser pull up at the curb and waved at the officers. They walked over to me and asked what was going on. I explained that Sophia appeared to be either lost or abandoned. One of the officers started talking to Sophia. He was nice and polite, but he was speaking English. I could see the frustration building on his face when his partner noticed the smile on my face. "Okay. Do you know why she won't talk to us?" he asked. I nodded my head. It appears that she only speaks Italian. My Italian is about 26 months old, so I can't get a lot out of her. "Do you guys have anyone who speaks the language that you can call? Bagno? Bathroom?" she asked. I motioned to one of the women sitting around the patio, pointed at Sophia, and said, "Bathroom." One of them came to my rescue, but Sophia wouldn't go with the woman, so the three of us made the trip. I stayed out in the hall. Sophia called me a couple of times just to make sure I was still there. When we got back to the table, I was informed that the police could not find anyone to speak Italian, so they called Child Protective Services, and a caseworker was coming. 2 hours later, the two cops, Sophia, and I went to a fast food joint for lunch. Sophia knew exactly what she wanted and, by pointing, made her choices known. I bought lunch for the four of us. When we got back to Latte Bliss, a very angry caseworker was waiting for us. She started right in on the police officers. She bitched at them about wasting her time by forcing her to wait for us. Well, they weren't about to take any crap from her, so a shouting match started. Sophia was getting scared, so I walked her away from all the noise. The caseworker saw me and started yelling that I was kidnapping the child and I should be stopped. I pulled out my cell phone and started making calls. I had been a large contributor to the current governor's campaign fund. My thought process was if I gave all that money, I might as well start getting a little benefit from it. I got one of the governor's underlings on the phone, explained who I was, and what my problem was. The reply was, "I'll take care of it." Took about 5 minutes when the caseworker's cell phone rang. She answered it very rudely. She was starting to yell at whoever interrupted her when suddenly she got very quiet. All I heard was a lot of "yes, sir" from her end of the conversation. While she was listening, an unmarked police car pulled up. I recognized the man getting out of the car. It was the chief of police. He walked up to his officers and they went into a conference. He then walked up to the caseworker and said, "Hang up the phone, get in your car, leave, and that's an order. If you fail to obey, he'll have you arrested." The caseworker left. The chief walked over to my table with his 2 officers and introduced himself. "Did either of my officers act in any way discourteous during their interactions with you?" "No, sir. They were very polite and helpful. They were working to find a translator so that we could help the girl," I said. The 2 uniformed patrolmen smiled at me. The chief sat down at my table, and we started discussing little Sophia. The 2 officers returned to patrol duty. The chief and I tried to decide what to do with my new friend. We decided that Sophia would stay in my house until they found her parents or other relatives, and they would try to find an Italian translator. My driver had returned to my house. He wanted to do a little yard work, so I called home and requested pickup. We were going to be very busy this afternoon buying Sophia a wardrobe of little girl clothes, so it was off to Horizon Mall for an afternoon of shopping. My driver's wife was also my housekeeper and cook. I asked if he'd bring her along to help pick out Sophia's outfits. Daniel, my driver, and his wife, Isabella, showed up about 19 minutes later. Isabella spent the whole trip to the mall quizzing me all about Sophia. When we got to the mall, the girls visited all the children's stores. Daniel and I just made trip after trip back to the car with packages. If I remember correctly, we visited the Funland Toys, Tiny Threads, Jellybean Junction, Little Learners, and the Children's Place. We didn't exactly buy something in every store, but it wasn't for lack of trying. My American Express got a real workout. Sophia and Isabella became the best of friends. They chattered back and forth to each other, neither one understanding what the other was saying, but that didn't stop them. They shared the universal language of women shopping. That's all they needed. I don't remember which store was selling children's bedroom furniture, but both of them stopped and stared at all the little girls' bedroom stuff. We didn't go in that store, thank God, but I had a feeling we would be back another time. By the time we got done buying out the mall, it was too late to cook dinner, so I was elected to buy everyone their meal. I had a brainstorm and selected Giovanni's Eatery on Meadow Lane in downtown Seattle. I figured that I might find someone who spoke Italian there, or at least find directions to someone who does. I mean, let's face it, it was an Italian restaurant. No one was around that spoke Italian, but the owner promised to keep an ear open for a native speaker. He was 4th-generation Italian, and all his Italian-speaking relatives had long since departed this earth. But the food was good, and Sophia had pizza. Like all kids, for a little kid, Sophia ate almost the whole thing. It was getting late when we left the restaurant. I think before we reached the freeway, there were 2 sleeping people in the back seat, Sophia and her new friend, Isabella. Shopping takes a lot out of you. Daniel and I unloaded all the bags into one of the spare bedrooms. Isabella and I put Sophia into the bedroom right next to mine. Isabella picked out a pair of Disney PJs for Sophia and helped her get cleaned up and dressed for bed. After Daniel and Isabella left for home, I decided to have a small drink before calling it a night. As I sat on my porch watching the stars, I heard a small voice calling, "Nano." I walked into the house and found a little girl huddled in a corner, softly crying. It broke my heart. I picked her up and carried her out to my chair. She cuddled as she sat on my lap and soon was back to sleep. We spent the night in the lounge chair. Boy, was I stiff the next morning. Isabella woke us up, wondering what we wanted for breakfast. I looked at Sophia and said, "Mangiare? Eat?" She jumped up and grabbed Isabella's hand, and the 2 of them headed for the kitchen. Soon I was served a cup of coffee by a very proud little girl. She chattered away to me as if I knew exactly what she was saying. I helped her set the coffee cup on the table so that we wouldn't get any spills. She stood there and watched me with the coffee. It took a few seconds before all the gray cells in my head realized that she was waiting for me to sip my coffee. I did and, with great exuberance, said, "Perfetto." I was rewarded with an Ertoir grin. I noticed that Isabella was standing in the doorway watching. She smiled at me and said, "Way to go, boss. Now go take a shower and get cleaned up while Sophia and I prepare breakfast." One thing I learned at my mother's knee: obey all commands given by a female, or you'll regret it. So I headed for my bathroom. As I was finishing dressing, a little voice said, "Nano, colazione." Breakfast. When I opened my bedroom door, there she was, waiting for me. She took my hand and escorted me to the kitchen. There I found the table set with my finest china. On closer examination, I noticed that the silverware was set in a very haphazard manner. I looked at the little one and gave her a big thumbs up. This time, along with my smile, I also got a hug. After breakfast, I got on the phone and started calling in favors and other forms of blackmail. I was looking for a translator. As much as Sophia was growing on me, I knew that somewhere someone was looking for her. She was just too precious a little girl. I think I should stop for a second and tell you about my estate. When I bought the property, there was a small in-law house behind the main house. Since I didn't have any in-laws, I rented the house out to vacationers in monthly periods. My estate was in a gated compound with all the necessary security, so the rent was high. Because of the security, location, and ridiculous rent I charged, I got people who were famous and wanted privacy. My current tenants were no exception. They arrived last night and I was yet to meet them. All I knew was they were a husband and wife with a small child. She was the main breadwinner with a job on national news. Sophia and I were enjoying our breakfast when we heard, "Excuse me, could I borrow some milk for coffee in our cereal?" Now, I knew that between renters we tossed out any leftover food. With the humidity, nothing lasted very long. I smiled at him and said, "No, but you guys must join us for breakfast. I know there is nothing to eat over there. Please join us. We have plenty of food and would love the company." After a few false starts, he agreed. He went back to the guest house for his wife and child. When they returned, we introduced ourselves and sat down to one of Isabella's fabulous meals. Since I was ahead in the food department, I explained about Sophia. My goal was to see if they knew any Italian speakers. They didn't, but our news anchor paid very close attention to my tale. We were even enjoying coffee from my Keurig coffee maker. Isabella had brought out a selection of coffees, teas, and some hot chocolates for the kids. My guest had a good time inspecting all the choices. My house phone started ringing. Isabella answered it, and after a short chat, handed me the phone. "Good morning," I started in a very formal voice. "Please hold for the ambassador," then put me on hold. The next voice I heard was a very pleasant male with a slight Italian accent. "Mr. Grayson, I'm the ambassador to the United States for my government. I understand that you have found a child of one of our citizens?" "Yes, sir, and I need some help with her." I went on to explain Sophia's discovery and everything we had done so far to help her. He listened politely until I was finished. He then asked if he could speak to her. I handed the phone to Sophia. "Pronto," she began. For the next 39 minutes, she listened and occasionally replied with a C or some rapid Italian I couldn't quite translate. Finally, she handed me back the phone. The ambassador highlighted their talk. It seemed that Sophia only knows of her life with her kidnappers. She did not know her mother or father, her real name, her age, or birth date. She was kept chained in small rooms as she grew from an infant. Her food was put in metal bowls on the floor of whatever room she was being kept in. She was never allowed out of her room. She was not allowed anything to wear but the shift I found her in. She was only ever called Girl. That was the only name she ever knew. The ambassador indicated he was sending a representative of his government to delve into her history. He also indicated that his people had checked me out, and it was decided that Sophia would remain with me until her fate was determined. The ambassador's representative would be flying out in 3 days and would be staying with Sophia at my home if that was agreeable. He said it was very agreeable with Sophia and me. I spent the next hour answering questions from everyone at the breakfast table. When they finally ran down, the chief of police showed up. I went through the morning's events with him. Somehow it was decided that Sophia needed a little girl's bed. Guess who was volunteered to buy one? Daniel brought the car around while Isabella dressed Sophia. Somehow my renters were invited along to see them all. I knew the husband didn't relish spending one of his vacation days shopping, so with very little effort, I talked him into spending the day at the golf course. We all fit into my SUV with room to spare. I drove the car to the mall while Daniel dropped off the husband at the golf course. Sophia recognized the mall, and when I explained that we were going to buy her a bed of her own, she cried tears of joy. She dragged me to the store where she saw the pink bedroom set yesterday. Now, Horizon Mall is a big place. Sophia navigated the mall to that store without a single error. When she grows up, she'll be one hell of a shopper. Sophia did not understand all the ins and outs of shopping, but she was learning fast. All she knew was that she wanted the pink bed and the great big teddy bear in it. I handed Isabella my gold card, and they left with the sales lady. She and Sophia left to pick out sheets and pillows and all the other stuff Sophia needed to establish her own room. Everything we purchased was to be delivered and set up by 6 p.m. that day. Sophia would sleep in a real bed tonight, her own bed. We were a happy group, so we stopped at the food court for junk food and ice cream. Sophia was overwhelmed. She had never seen anything like the food court. She wanted to try everything. But Isabella put the kibosh on that idea. I suppose I didn't mention that Isabella was a health food addict. Junk food was not in her dictionary. But Sophia still got some junk food. That kid could charm the socks off anyone. It was 3 p.m. when we arrived home and found a large furniture truck waiting for us. Sophia's new bedroom had arrived. The movers had most of the items off the truck, and they were sitting in front of the garage waiting for us. Sophia was so excited she walked up to the biggest mover and started jabbering away in Italian. The two of them entered the house hand in hand with Sophia leading the way. She took him right to the bedroom next to mine and started pointing to the existing furniture. As she pointed to a piece, she would demonstrate carrying it out to the hall and into the next empty room. The movers loved it. Before long, they were a perfectly coordinated team, the guys carting and Sophia directing. It took until 7 p.m., but the guys got everything set up. I walked the two men out to their truck. I gave each man $260 as a tip. At first, they refused the money, explaining that Sophia was worth their time and I didn't need to tip them, but I prevailed. Sophia, Isabella, and my renter went to work putting Sophia's stuff into the various drawers and storage things. When we purchased her clothing, it looked like a lot of stuff, but when it was all put away, the drawers and things were painfully empty. I knew there were a lot of trips back to the mall in my near future. I sent Daniel out for food and the golfer as Sophia gave me a tour of her new room. The big teddy bear was in the middle of her bed. In his arms was her little doll. Sophia walked over to the bed and pointed at the big bear. "Toy," she said. Then she touched the little doll. Sophia was all she said. I just stood there with tears running down my cheeks. Sophia reached into the pocket of her dress and came out with my handkerchief from yesterday. She pulled me down on my knees and started drying my cheeks. That night I wore pajamas to bed in case I got a visitor in the middle of the night. I got a little visitor. This time she wasn't scared. She was happy and wanted to cuddle. Toward the end of the week, I got an email from the French embassy. It was the flight number and arrival time of Sophia's tutor. Sophia, Daniel, and I were standing in the arrival lounge when Miss Olivia Romano walked through the gate. She was stunning, dark hair, olive skin, dark eyes, about 67. I've never been good at guessing a woman's weight, but her body was perfect. She was dressed in a business suit that heightened her attributes, in my humble opinion. Wow. We went through the greeting routine between us adults. When everyone was introduced, Olivia squatted down and introduced herself to Sophia in Italian. The two of them must have chatted for at least 5 minutes. When Olivia finally stood back up, Sophia was holding her hand. I felt a twinge of jealousy, but Sophia pulled Olivia over to me and took my hand in her free one. We walked out of the airport with Sophia between the two of us holding our hands. We walked to the baggage claim area. Olivia pointed out 2 small bags. Not a lot of clothes, I thought. I hoped she was having the rest of her stuff shipped. When we arrived home, Daniel put her luggage in one of the spare rooms. Sophia gave Olivia the grand tour of the house, ending with Sophia's bedroom. It was a busy afternoon. Sophia and Olivia spent until Sophia's bedtime just talking. Even through dinner, the two of them disappeared into the rear of the house. About an hour later, the two of them reappeared. Sophia had on PJs and Olivia a long housecoat. They both had that fresh scrubbed look. Sophia kissed me good night and said something to Olivia. Olivia laughed and said, "Sophia wants to know if you're still going to tuck her in bed or if you'll be tucking me in instead." I suppose my jaw dropped open. Sophia said something to Olivia. Olivia started laughing. Sophia wants to know if it's still all right to climb into bed with you if she gets scared or if he'll get mad at her. I suppose she thinks we'll be sleeping together. I suppose I couldn't believe my ears because I was mute. Olivia just smiled. Out of the mouths of babes, I thought. I took Sophia's hand and walked her into my bedroom. I took her over to my bed, pointed at my side, and said, "Toy." Pointing at the other pillow, I said, "Sophia." I was rewarded with an Ertoir smile. I had a very happy little girl. Sophia looked at the bed and started pointing, "Nano, Sophia, Olivia," indicating which pillow was for each of us. I looked over at Olivia, who was just enjoying the hell out of this whole conversation. "Okay, explain yourself," I challenged. Olivia just looked at Sophia and said, "See." Now it was my turn to laugh. After I got Sophia all tucked in, I went looking for Olivia. I found her on the lanai waiting for me. She was drinking a glass of wine. I fixed myself a crown royal on the rocks, a strong one. We've got to talk. I learned a lot about Sophia today. Damn right we do, I replied. I was pissed. I was just having fun with you. You really need to loosen up a little. First and most important is that Sophia has never had any education or mother-child bonding. She was left to raise herself. Her language skills are about equal to a 4-9 months old. She has never been taught any personal hygiene. She has never been shown any affection in her whole life. Well, the language skills aren't that far off. I figured she's 5 or 6, I replied. Sorry, but as near as I can tell, she's around 10 or 11. Olivia went on to tell me her qualifications. She was a child psychologist educated in Paris and Switzerland. She said that Sophia was a blank slate. We could mold her into a productive member of the human race if I wanted to help. Olivia went on to tell me all about her afternoon with Sophia. Olivia looked around and said, "This is your home," but Sophia refers to it as if it's both of yours. You need to be very careful how you refer to it around her. Me? I was still stuck at her age. Next, I will start teaching her English, she continued. As soon as her English improves, I want you to start reading to her at bedtime. It will not only help her English, but it will also help her learn affection. We need to replicate all the personal interactions a child would have during their early 9 months. I can do that, I said proudly. The next thing we need to do is demonstrate affection between adults. By that, I mean simple things like hand-holding, simple kissing, hugging, and affectionate touching. It sounds like you have a lot of work laid out for us. How long will you be staying, and will your husband or boyfriend object? I asked. I have no one in my life at present, and as for how long, well, play that by ear. Get a good night's sleep. You should have your friend join you when she gets lonely, she continued. I must have looked at her funny because she said, "Not me, Sophia." Over the next couple of weeks, our renter, our news lady, spent a lot of time with Sophia and Olivia. When Olivia told her not to work on a story just yet, she was just being protective towards Sophia. The next few days were crazy around the house. First, there was the arrival of Olivia's stuff. The UPS guy made at least 5 trips with his handcart. I knew women liked clothes, but this was ridiculous. She, with Sophia's help, managed to get everything unpacked and either stored in her closet or in the dresser. I did get a laugh at some of what they sent. There were winter clothes and a set of skis. In case you don't know, it very rarely gets below 84°F here. The tall volcanoes may get an occasional few inches of snow, but there aren't ski lifts and there's not much call for cold weather outfits. It seemed as if Sophia and Olivia were joined at the hip. If you saw one, the other was right next to her. I began to see a method in Olivia's madness. When Sophia asked a question, Olivia answered it in English first. Then if Sophia didn't get it, Olivia went back and slowly answered it again, this time explaining the English words in Italian. I began to notice that Sophia was accepting the English answers more often than not. The next big surprise was when the UPS man arrived with boxes of school books. Sophia was to start her adventure into homeschooling. She took to it like a fish to water. She and Olivia set up a small classroom in one of my spare bedrooms. They spent at least 4 hours in the morning, broke for lunch, did some girl things, and then, if time permitted, the rest of the afternoon before dinner. If Olivia wasn't handy, I was given the chance to answer Sophia's school questions. Sophia tried to talk to me in English when she asked a question. Under pain of death from Olivia, I was required to answer in English. Sophia had an Italian and English dictionary with her at these times. I could judge if my answer was over her head by the amount of page-turning that was going on. 2 months had gone by, and I was really impressed with Sophia's progress and Olivia's skills. One morning at breakfast, I was interrupted by a phone call from Washington, D.C. It was the Italian ambassador. It seems as if we were the darlings of the morning news shows. My renter did a special on Sophia, child kidnappings, and our success with saving Sophia. There was Sophia smiling from ear to ear, holding Olivia's and my hand. Sophia at the Latte Bliss. Sophia at the mall. We had a long conversation, the core of which was, of course, Sophia and her safety. The Italian government could find nothing about Sophia, no parents, no siblings, no nothing. Unless someone would step forward and adopt her, she was headed for an Italian orphanage. I didn't even have to stop and think. I just said, "Of course I will." The ambassador just laughed. "I knew you would, but I had to ask," he said. He would make all the necessary arrangements. His next statement floored me. "What about Olivia? Her being available will cease when you adopt Sophia," he stated. "She is attached to the embassy. Sophia would be heartbroken if Olivia left. Can we get her a work visa? Then I could pay her as a tutor. I like having Olivia around. A candy and all that. And besides, I liked our chats after Sophia went to bed. At first, the talks were all about Sophia and her progress, but with time, they evolved into conversations about each other. We found compatibility. Talk to her and let me know was all he said. That night, Olivia and I had what was to be the first of many talks. I told her about my decision to adopt Sophia to prevent her from ending up in an orphanage. Well, I had always heard that Italian women had terrible tempers. Olivia proved that to be a fact. She read me the riot act. I suppose I struck a nerve. Olivia yelled that while my intentions were good, I was a stupid pig. Actually, she used a much stronger adjective describing what I sat on, and she wasn't referring to a chair. When she finally calmed down, we discussed the adoption into the wee hours. We left it that it was Sophia's decision. I knew I would be heartbroken if Sophia didn't choose me. Olivia was quiet around me for the next month, and I walked on eggs. One morning when Daniel and I were returning from coffee, we were met at the door by Olivia and Sophia. Sophia ran up to me and just hugged me with all her might. Olivia threw her arms around my neck and gave me a kiss. I suppose I did something right, but I'll be damned if I knew what. When Olivia finally gave me my lips back, she said, "You are a wonderful man. The ambassador called today. The papers are being FedExed to us." What papers? I never claimed to be the sharpest pencil in the box. Don't you try and fool me. I know you planned everything adopting Sophia and sponsoring my visa so I could stay here with you too. That night, there were two sweet females in my bed, Sophia in her usual spot and Olivia spooned against my back. Damn, I got a really good sleep. The next morning, I woke with Olivia poking me. It was a nice way to wake. Too bad that Sophia was wrapped around my back. I could have stayed that way all day. As I wiggled my way out of bed, I heard not one but two females complaining. I went to the bathroom, got undressed, shaved, and hopped in the shower. About halfway through, I felt a draft. Olivia had drawn back the curtain and was inspecting me. Not bad was all she said before leaving. I started to protest her departure, but then I heard Sophia's voice. I decided that I would start researching summer camps for Sophia. That way I could get some alone time with Olivia. It was a nice idea, but I found that there weren't any overnight summer camps around. The next couple of 9 months just flew by. Sophia accepted Olivia and me as her parents. I really don't know when or how it happened, but one day I noticed that we were mommy and daddy when she referred to us. Olivia and I grew closer. While I was still shy as far as marriage was concerned, that didn't stop me from allowing her to move into my bedroom. Sophia even stopped visiting us in the middle of the night. Olivia and I started taking afternoon naps when Sophia was in school, just in case we got a little visitor in the middle of the night. As part of Sophia's development, she started going to school with her peers. She did great. She blended in with her age group, and we had kids visiting the house almost every day. Our house became the neighborhood hangout. Every weekend, Sophia had a couple of her friends sleep over. Isabella loved the kids. Her grandchildren lived in Nevada. These were her substitute grandchildren. One day, I asked her if taking care of all the children was too much for her. I know Italian women have a temper, but I never realized that Bahamasan women did also. And to make matters worse, Bahamasan women were really good with knives. One of these days, I'm going to learn to keep my mouth shut. One Sunday, Sophia sat on my lap to chat. "Nano, when are you going to ask mommy to marry you? You know she loves you very much, and you love her too. And besides, I want a baby sister or brother before you are too old." A lot of thoughts crossed my mind in a few seconds. The one that ended up at the forefront of my mind was, why not? So I asked Sophia, if you can keep a secret, you and I will go looking at rings after school tomorrow. When I picked her up the next afternoon, she had a list of all the jewelers on the island. She wanted to visit all of them. What Sophia wants, Sophia gets. She and I spent the next couple of weeks shopping. It was the usual conundrum. We ended up back at the first shop we had looked through. The ring we chose was a simple diamond surrounded by small cut birthstones. They were Sophia's, mine, and hers. The jeweler said he could add more birthstones if we had more children. It was simple but elegant. Sophia approved and I paid. The next thing Sophia did was plan how I was to propose. She told me, "You are the best dad, but you don't understand women. I'll plan the proposal." And plan she did. She and Isabella worked out all the details for a special dinner. They planned it for the date that Sophia found me at Latte Bliss. That sounded good to Olivia, a special dinner on the day that our little Sophia joined me. Isabella did her usual excellent job of preparing and serving the meal. We were having a very relaxed dinner when Isabella served dessert. On Olivia's plate was only the ring box. She just sat there with tears running down her face, still not yet opening the box. Sophia broke the silence. "Well, aren't you going to open it?" Olivia just sat there shaking her head and crying. She made no move to open the box. Sophia just looked at me and said, "Well, ask her." So I did. "Olivia, will you make me the happiest man in the world and marry me?" I know it wasn't an elegant speech, but I'm not that good a speaker. At that point, Sophia put her 2 cents in. "Say yes so you can start making me a brother or sister." Olivia picked the box up and held it in very shaky hands, saying yes, yes, yes. The women went crazy for the next 2 months. They decided the location for the wedding, the park at Sunset Peak, and they even got a Catholic priest to preside over the outside wedding. The reception was to be at my country club, where there were to be about 260 guests. The bridesmaid was to be Sophia, and the best man was to be Daniel. The rest of the wedding party was to be our friends. Some of Olivia's friends worked for the French embassy in Washington. They were invited, all expenses paid. Olivia's parents had died, but she did have a sister and brother in Italy. They, along with their entire families, were invited, again all expenses paid. There were even a few distant cousins. The 260 attendees grew to a little over 520, all expenses paid. I ended up renting a couple of floors at one of the beach hotels. I don't even want to talk about the cost. You guys know the routine. I wasn't allowed to do anything concerning the wedding dress except pay for it. But both Sophia and Olivia accompanied me to pick out the tuxedos. I was under the impression that all I had to do was basically pick one. Boy, was I wrong. Let me tell you, Olivia and Sophia spent all afternoon making sure my outfit was perfect. They almost drove the tailor to a nervous breakdown with all their changes. I'm just glad it was a black tuxedo with a white shirt. Just think what would have happened if I had wanted a colored shirt or, heaven forbid, a pattern. We'd probably still be in the store. All I can say is when Sophia gets married, I'm going on a 9-month-long around-the-world cruise ending the day before the wedding. I'm not going to be around for all that planning. I just couldn't stand the stress. I'm just going to leave the American Express card. Every time Daniel walked by me, he just laughed. I was going to fire him after the wedding. I told him so, and he just laughed even harder. The big day finally arrived. I wasn't allowed in my own house the few days before. I ended up staying in the hotel with all Olivia's relatives. They turned out to be a really fun bunch. Between my broken Italian and their broken English and my credit card, we got along famously. There I was, standing in front of the makeshift altar with the priest, when this beautiful vision in white started down the aisle with the bridal party leading the way. She was my soon-to-be wife, Olivia. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. I remember saying, "I do." I remember the reception. I remember everyone congratulating me, and most of all, I remember the wedding night. That night we started on making a baby, but Olivia had been on the pill, and it took almost 4 months before it took. Olivia and I were gone 3 weeks on our honeymoon. She took me to her homeland and showed me the land of her birth. Italy is a beautiful country, and every night was special. I hated to leave and return home to normal, that is, if you can call living in Canary Islands normal. I really don't know who was happier between the three of us. All I know was that Sophia helped pick out everything for the baby's room, helped send out shower invitations, and accompanied Olivia on all her visits to the OB. Olivia did draw the line at the labor room. Only I was allowed in there. It was a beautiful April afternoon when Luca Romano Johnson entered the world at 10.3 pounds. A very healthy baby boy. When Sophia was allowed in the room, the first thing she did was visit her new brother. "Hi Luca, I'm your big sister. Welcome to our home." The nurse picked the baby up and let Sophia hold him for just a moment before giving him to his mom to start feeding. Sophia watched everything Olivia did with the baby. Sophia had discovered the miracle of life and started to realize her place in it. The wait in the hospital worked out. It was 2 days before Olivia and son could leave the hospital. I think they were the longest 2 days in Sophia's life. Sophia had arranged to take the day off from school and was up and dressed at dawn. She supervised Daniel's installing the baby seat, placement of the diaper bag, and of course picked out all the baby toys. She lectured Daniel on keeping to the speed limit, missing potholes, and general safe driving procedures. She informed him, "You are driving my brother home. I knew I had to give him a bonus at Christmas for his patience. Sophia had plans to show her brother all the sights on his way home. Unfortunately, he slept all the way. Anybody who has raised children knows that for the first few months, the child just eats, sleeps, and uses up diapers. Sophia spent all her free time just watching her brother and asking Olivia all sorts of questions. If I wanted to visit with Sophia, I had to pick her brother up and leave the room, followed as if on a leash. I still can remember at about 3 to 4 months when Luca recognized his sister and gave her a big toothless grin. Sophia was hooked from that point on. Sophia was his perfect big sister. When Sophia's friends came over, they were subjected to tales of Luca's accomplishments. But being girls, they loved it. It was cute to see all the girls watching whenever he needed a diaper change, and it was even funnier when 1 or 2 of the girls got showered during the changing. They all complained. It took another 9 months before anything of note happened. Olivia and Sophia had their annual physicals. When they returned, Sophia was a very quiet little girl. She and Olivia disappeared into Sophia's bedroom with a pamphlet the doctor gave her. I suppose Olivia was going to tell Sophia the facts of life. Dads were not invited to these discussions. They spent until dinner in Sophia's bedroom, but when they sat down to dinner, Sophia was acting like her old self. Olivia held my hand through the meal, but she did give that "we'll-talk later" look. We did talk later. Olivia explained everything she, Sophia, and the OBGYN discussed. The outcome of our talk was that I was to keep my mouth shut and not embarrass Sophia. I suppose there are things fathers can't know concerning their daughters. About a week passed when the doctor's office called. We were to bring Sophia in for some additional tests. No big deal, but the doctor just wants to check some additional things. The nurse gave us a series of appointments at the hospital and the lab. The end result of all the tests was that Sophia has leukemia. We had a family visit with an oncologist. The man was full of hope and good news. There were phrases of, "We caught it early, a bone marrow transplant and a little chemotherapy is all that's required, and most importantly, she'll live a long and productive life." I was worried about finding a bone marrow donor because of our non-blood relationship. We got lucky. Sophia had a very common bone marrow type. A match was no problem. A lot of Sophia's friends volunteered to be tested as donors. While none of them were used, it made Sophia very proud of her friends. When it came time for the transplant, Olivia and I just about lived at the hospital. She got cards and letters from all her classmates. The bone marrow transplant was a success, but the oncologist wanted to still do chemotherapy just in case. Sophia was a sick little girl. Her hair fell out. Olivia and I shaved our heads too. The 3 of us made quite a sight. Sophia picked out headscarves for Olivia and me. The girls' scarves looked good on them. Mine was a weird pattern in color. My girls would look at me and snicker. I knew I would been set up, but if it helped Sophia, I didn't care. One day I got a phone call from the school. They wanted me to bring Sophia in for a homecoming rally. When the date of the rally arrived, Olivia and I escorted Sophia into the school's gym. Imagine my surprise when we walked in and found we were facing about 260 bald teenagers. Her class had decided to show their support by shaving their heads. Sophia was weak, but she held on my arm and just smiled from ear to ear. The kids just chanted Sophia over and over again. Sophia and Olivia cried. Me, well, let's say I must have gotten something in my eyes because they watered freely. It was about 9 months after that first meeting with the oncologist that we got the good news. The doctor said the chemotherapy had worked, and Sophia was cancer-free. She could start high school in the fall as a freshman. We were a very happy family that night. I overheard Sophia telling her 9-month-old brother that she'd be around to help him grow up. I cried my eyes out later. I never realized that Sophia was contemplating death while dealing with her cancer. Sophia and her brother were inseparable. If you found one, you usually found the other. It got so bad that Olivia and I enrolled him in preschool. This allowed Luca to tell his sister all about his day at school. Olivia and I watched in amazement as the 2 siblings developed a special bond. The 9 months flew by. Olivia and I grew closer. I suppose Sophia's sickness was the catalyst. We behaved like an old married couple. By that, I mean lovemaking dropped off to once or twice a week. We didn't sit on the couch and cuddle every night, only on those nights Sophia didn't join us. Sophia's sophomore and junior 9 months passed quickly. Soon we were discussing colleges. In Canary Islands, there aren't a lot of choices, so we expanded our search to the mainland. We searched the West Coast and the Ivy Leagues on the East Coast. Sophia decided that she really didn't want to leave home, so she elected to apply to Brigham Young University Canary Islands CI. It was a beautiful campus next to the Polynesian Cultural Center. It was during the Christmas holidays that I noticed Sophia wasn't her normal cheerful self. I chalked it up to the strain of the holidays and selecting a college. Well, you can imagine my surprise when the school called. Sophia had collapsed and was taken to emergency. The doctors poked and prodded the poor kid. They kept her overnight. Olivia, Luca, and I slept in her room at the hospital that night. The next morning, her old oncologist visited her. He kept ordering tests most of the day. That night, he sat us all down. All he said was, "It's back." Olivia collapsed, and I managed to catch her before she hit the floor. Luca ran from the room, wanting to be alone with his fear. Me, I just walked over to Sophia's bed and started talking to her. "Well, beat it again. They have new medicines. You'll be ready to graduate this spring," and before you know it, the doctor took my arm. He just shook his head no. "She has about 4 months. There's nothing we can do. It's just too far advanced." Olivia collapsed again. I felt Sophia's arms go around me from behind, and she said, "Just hold me, Nano." My daughter and I had a good cry. Sophia didn't make the doctor's promised 4 months. Sophia left us one night about 2 months later, with Olivia and me holding her. Luca holding Sophia's great big teddy bear at the foot of her bed, with tears rolling down his cheeks. The funeral was a solemn affair. Most of her senior class showed up at the gravesite, carrying simple leis of white flowers. Most of them ended up decorating her coffin. I'll admit it, I blubbered like a fool. My little girl was gone. That night I had my first dream. It was of a little girl with beautiful eyes watching me at latte bliss. I couldn't get those eyes to go away. I got out of bed and opened a bottle from my bar. I sat on the couch and finished the bottle. It helped me sleep that night. One morning before I started on a new bottle, I saw Isabella watching me. She had a disapproving expression on her face. "It helps me forget her. It helps with the pain." "It will only be for a little while," I explained. She looked at me and said, "You've been drunk for the last 9 months. Olivia would not let you be this way." Then Isabella hit me right between the eyes. "Your wife and son have left you. They have gone back to Italy. They won't return until you're sober." It took a few minutes because my brain wasn't hitting on all cylinders, but it finally sunk in. I resolved to start sobering up. I got up from the chair and opened another bottle. I would start tomorrow or maybe the next day, but Friday I was checking in for detox. Then the plan was a visit to Italy to reclaim my family, just like Sophia would want her Nano to do. And that's the story of love, loss, and resilience. How would you face such life-changing moments? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you next time.